Here's what every HVAC company will tell you. If you want cooler air in summer, you need a bigger machine. Here's what the numbers actually show. At 6 feet down, the ground under much of Pennsylvania and Ohio sits near 54 to 56 degrees Fahrenheit. Your attic air does not. Your siding does not. Your roof deck does not. They say cooling starts with a compressor. The data says cooling starts with temperature difference. They say you need refrigerant, service calls, and a monthly bill. The data says a buried air path and a 38-watt fan can deliver a 10-degree drop at the vent in 5 minutes. I believed the other story for years. The reason you were never told the real number is simple. This system was written out of the building conversation in the 1950s. Someone had a very good reason. Keep that in mind. I'm going to show you how ground-tempered air can cut supply temperature by 10 degrees in minutes. It uses the same soil under your feet and less than $400 in materials. And yes, this works even if your house was built 50 years ago. It works if you live in a city. It works if you have never done this before. Stay with me. What I found in Holmes County uses the same physics the Persians used to cool desert rooms more than 2,000 years ago. And the promise gets better. You are not chasing a miracle. You are using a temperature reservoir that already exists. You are borrowing coolant from dirt that never sends a bill. If you can measure, dig, and seal a line, you can test this in one room first. Then you decide whether it deserves a larger place in your house. Most people never test air. They trust the thermostat and the bill. Do that once here. When you feel 76-degree air arrive from a yard ignored an hour earlier, your idea of comfort changes first. You stop asking what machine can overpower summer. You start asking how the house can stop fighting the ground. The mechanism is brutally simple. Heat moves from hot to cold, always. The United States Department of Energy says temperatures about 30 feet below the surface remain relatively constant year-round. In many climates, that means roughly 50 to 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Even above that depth, shaded soil below the daily swing stays dramatically cooler than summer air. That is your battery. When you pull 86-degree outdoor air through a buried tube surrounded by 54 to 56-degree soil, heat leaves the air. It moves into the pipe wall and then into the earth. Think about a car radiator in reverse. The surfaces change, the law does not. A 4-inch tube moving 180 cubic feet per minute with a 10-degree drop delivers about 1,944 BTUs of sensible cooling per hour. Humidity helps you too. When warm air touches a cooler tube wall, some moisture condenses and releases latent heat. Your body already understands this. Sweat cools you because evaporation moves heat. A cold glass sweats because warm air gives heat away. The buried tube uses the same exchange. The earth is not magic. It is a giant heat sink. Now compare the input. A sealed inline fan drawing 38 watts uses about 129 BTUs per hour of electricity. That gives you roughly 15 units of cooling benefit for every 1 unit of electrical input. That is a coefficient of performance near 15. Conventional central air usually lives closer to 3 or 4. Same problem, different physics. That gap represents billions of dollars in equipment, refrigerant, installation, and service every year. And that is why you have never heard of this. I first felt it outside Berlin, Ohio, in Holmes County. It was late July. The gravel lot was shimmering. The barn roof was popping in the heat. Then I stepped beside a shaded bank wall and felt a ribbon of air across my wrist. It was so much cooler that I stopped talking. No condenser hummed. No compressor kicked on. I could hear swallows, wagon tires, and one screen door. I asked Eli why that side room stayed usable in that heat. He smiled. Then he said, "You keep the air where the earth keeps it." After that, he showed me the intake line. Then he showed me the stone-backed room it served. His family had used the same logic for 4 generations. The knowledge came with families from the Palatinate and Alsace. Then it settled into Pennsylvania and Ohio because the soil gave the same answer here. What struck me most was the silence. The room felt calm in a way modern cooling rarely does. No dry blast, no metal rattle, no thermostat hunt. Eli told me the older men never started with machines. They started with slope, shade, stone, and where the summer wind crossed the yard. They watched frost lines. They watched where butter held. They watched where milk soured slower. The Amish didn't read this in a textbook. They figured it out the way all real knowledge gets discovered, by paying attention to what the earth was already doing. That knowledge never disappeared. It was filed away. It was waiting. The Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission's Lancaster Plain Study, published in 2009, documents vaulted cellars used for cool storage in the 1750s. It also documents spring houses serving Lancaster County farms from about 1780 to 1865. If you go back farther, you land in Yazd. Persian builders paired badgirs with underground kanat channels. They drove hot desert air across cooler earth and water. Modern measurements on surviving systems show drops of several degrees Celsius, often up to 8 degrees in peak heat. Then you move west and north and find the same answer again. In the German regions of Württemberg and Bavaria, families dug stone-vaulted cellars into shaded hillsides. They set them below the daily heat swing because earth held steady when the air did not. In the American Southwest, Pueblo builders used thick earthen walls and partially sunken rooms for the same reason. Different language, different century, same physics. You can even trace the idea through Rome. In buried cryptoporticus corridors and cool storage rooms, you see the same bargain with earth and shade. Less solar gain, more stable mass, more livable interiors. Nobody shared a patent across those worlds. Nobody held a global seminar. They arrived there because the body hates heat and the ground keeps telling the truth. Every civilization that mastered extreme heat arrived at the same answer independently. The Amish never forgot. They carried it from the Palatinate to Pennsylvania and Ohio about 280 years ago. They kept building it because it worked. They never needed anyone's permission to do what made sense. When you trace the modern break, you land on Willis Carrier and the compressor business that followed him. By the 1950s, residential cooling was no longer just an invention. It was a market. A house that stayed livable through soil, shade, and moving air threatened compressor sales, refrigerant sales, and decades of service revenue. Then the mechanism locked in. In 1958, the Federal Housing Administration replaced its patchwork local standards with one national minimum property standards book. A 2003 National Institute of Building Sciences study quotes the 1959 review explaining the new rule. Requirements that would apply only in certain localities would be omitted. That was the rule. The FHA task force built that book with comments from more than 150 trade associations. It also used comments from the National Association of Home Builders. Local passive practices vanished from the approved national language. That sentence looks harmless. It was not. Once a local method vanished from the national book, lenders stopped seeing it as normal. Builders stopped teaching it to crews. Drafting rooms stopped detailing it. Inspectors stopped expecting it. The method did not fail in the field. It failed on paper first. Then paper trained memory. Look at who benefited. Meredith Publishing sold the modern, cooled dream through Better Homes and Gardens. FHA-backed standardization made tract housing and uniform mechanical specifications easier to finance. Carrier, Frigidaire, and the wider appliance industry got houses designed around purchased systems instead of inherited local knowledge. The money ran in one direction, toward standard equipment, toward replacement cycles. The utilities liked it too. Post-war electric demand rose hardest on hot afternoons. Utilities needed people to normalize summer peak use, not dodge it. The magazines sold comfort. The builders sold convenience. The lenders sold standardization. The equipment makers sold the box that finished the story. Nobody told you, not your builder, not your contractor, not the man who sold you a bigger unit. By the time post-war suburbs spread across the Sun Belt, the story was finished. You were not sold a house that resisted heat. You were sold a house that tolerated heat because a machine would correct it later. Longer roof spans, wider west glass, thinner shade strategy, and bigger ducts all made sense if compressor cooling waited in the budget. Once that assumption hardened, every passive method looked old, provincial, or suspect. That knowledge never disappeared. It was set aside. It was waiting. An entire field of knowledge disappeared from architecture schools, building codes, and everyday building memory. Not because it failed, because it wasn't profitable. And the modern version is still happening. In March 2021, the International Code Council Board ended the governmental member vote for the Energy Code process. That came after intense conflict around stronger efficiency rules. At the same time, groups like the National Association of Home Builders kept fighting adoption of the 2021 Energy Code. The Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute reported $964,622 in federal lobbying in 2022. Better envelopes, lower loads, and passive cooling shrink equipment tonnage. That is the motive. The HVAC contractor market in America is worth well over $150 billion a year. Every alternative installed is a compressor, refrigerant charge, and service contract that never gets sold. Now, if you already own a house and you're thinking this only applies to people with land, stay with me. Because this next part is specifically for you. You don't need to tear up your foundation, rip out your existing system, or buy equipment. You need a yard, a drill, a weekend. What I want you to build is not complicated. It is one buried intake line feeding one room. It can also feed the return side of a small circulation loop. That lets you test the result before doing anything larger. Start on the north or east side of the house if you can. Give yourself 40 to 60 feet of run. Bury the pipe 5.5 to 6 feet deep, where the afternoon heat swing cannot chase it. Use 4-inch SDR 35 sewer pipe or smooth bore HDPE, not black corrugated drain tile. Make the trench fall back toward the intake point at a 2% slope. That means roughly 1 inch of drop every 4 feet. Bed the pipe in 3 inches of washed gravel. Seal every joint. Bring the intake up 24 to 30 inches above grade and cover it with a stainless steel screen hood. On the house end, core a 4.25-inch wall opening and connect a 4-inch inline fan rated between 160 and 220 CFM. Most good fans in that range draw 38 to 52 watts. Add a simple filter box before the fan. A MER V8 filter is enough for the test run. Use EPDM gaskets or exterior silicone where the line enters the wall. Insulate the last 3 to 4 feet indoors with closed cell foam. That keeps you from losing the gain at the finish line. If your soil stays wet, place a small condensate sump at the low end. A 5-gallon bucket sleeve works. Run a 3/4-inch drain line to daylight. Placement decides the result. Keep the intake at least 10 feet from a dryer vent, septic line, or driveway edge. Put it under shade if possible. Keep the first interior register low on the wall. Do not place it high. The cool air should wash the occupied part of the room first. If you already have a window unit, run both for one afternoon and watch the compressor cycle drop. That is how you prove the savings to yourself. Startup matters too. Begin before the house peaks. Turn the fan on in the morning, not at 5 p.m. after the drywall, sofa, and ceiling have already stored heat. If you pair the tube with a whole house fan after sunset, you purge the day's load, then recharge the interior mass overnight. The next afternoon starts from a lower number. That is how old buildings stayed sane before compressors became mandatory in your imagination. You can also build a simple service cleanout. Add a Y fitting near the house end with a threaded cap. Once a year, you open it, inspect for standing water, and confirm the drain is clear. If you want one more layer of protection, mount the fan on vibration isolators and add a backdraft damper. That keeps insects, winter drafts, and noise from sneaking backward when the fan is off. Smooth wall pipe is not optional. Corrugated drain tile causes standing condensation, biofilm, and the exact mold problem critics love to wave around. Done correctly, the water drains. Done lazily, the pipe turns into a swamp. That part matters. Your material cost stays low. Pipe usually runs $85 to $140. A proper inline fan runs $48 to $86. Gravel, screen hood, sealant, filter box, and fittings add another $62 to $118. If you rent a walk-behind trencher for 4 hours, expect $90 to $140. If you dig by hand, you spend sweat instead of cash. One Saturday morning with a trencher is enough. 2 weekends with a shovel also gets it done. On a 95-degree day, under high afternoon load, this setup commonly sends 74 to 79-degree air to the vent. You usually see that after the first 5 minutes. It keeps doing that while the earth around the tube stays cooler than the air you feed it. Nobody told you. Not your builder, not your contractor, not the man who sold you a bigger condenser. Maintenance is simple. Check the screen once a season. Change the filter once a year. Flush the line and inspect the drain every 3 years. Test it honestly. Put one thermometer at the intake. Put one at the vent. Put one in the middle of the room. Check the numbers at minute 1, minute 5, minute 15, and minute 30. Write down outdoor humidity too. On dry days, the line cools fast and stays clean. On muggy days, the drain matters even more. If your drop is only 4 degrees, your pipe is too short, too shallow, or too warm from poor shading. If you see 8 to 12 degrees, you built it correctly. Then decide on your next step. You can add a second parallel run, a 6-inch trunk, or a transfer grill. That moves the coolth deeper into the house. Start small. Measure honestly. Expand only after the numbers earn it. That is how old families built almost everything worth keeping. One room first. One season first. Then repeat what works. Your conventional system costs $6,800 to $14,400 to install. It costs $118 to $246 per month to run in heavy summer use. It lasts 12 to 18 years before it ends up in a landfill. This costs $285 to $484 total. It lasts 25 to 35 years. Your choice. Everything I've covered across this channel, root cellar cooling, gravity-fed water, and lime wash walls, now lives in one place. Step by step, season by season, room by room, in the order the families actually use it. Link is in the description. But stay here. Because what Ruben built beside his workshop is the part nobody is talking about yet. If you believe real knowledge was pushed aside for someone else's profit, you already know what to do. Hit subscribe. Not for me. For what comes next. Because this is not a channel. This is a quiet movement of people who have decided they're done being sold what they already own. I want to hear from you. Drop your state, your July power bill, and whether your grandparents used a cellar, spring house, or whole house fan in the comments. I read every single one. And your answers decide what we cover next. Next week, I'm going to show you what a 1946 Penn State document proves about keeping stored food cold through August. No grid needed. The technique uses nothing but stone, airflow, and lime. And the old report proves extension experts knew about it decades before the supermarket made your cellar obsolete. You will not want to miss that one.